Hi guys, welcome. I'm gonna give everyone a couple more minutes to join us, and then we're gonna start. And just before we actually go through anything here, I just want to mention that we're gonna start with a white canvas, and make sure you have a pencil. If you have a ruler, that would be helpful, but not necessary. But pencil is necessary. And again, I'll give everyone another minute to join us, and then we'll start. All right, so hopefully we have everyone who was hoping to join us on live version today, and the rest can watch later from the video. Because if you guys first time maybe painting with us, just wanted to mention that it's being recorded. The video is going to remain right here on our YouTube. It's not going anywhere, so you can technically come back and do it anytime. If something comes up today and you can do it today, that's no problem. All right, let's go through all our supplies to make sure we have everything that we're going to need for today. First thing you're going to need again is a canvas. I'm going to be using a fairly small canvas. This is 8 by 10 inch, as you can see in comparison to the size of my hand. It's not that big. And you can definitely use any larger size. It doesn't have to be the specific size, because my instructions are not size specific. So any size that works for you will work for me. Next thing you're going to need is pencil. So make sure you have pencil. And of course, eraser is helpful to have. Another thing you will need is, of course, paint. As always, we use student grade acrylic paint, primary colors only, which is yellow, blue, red, plus black and white. You can have pointy. It really doesn't matter. It is whatever you personally prefer. You use that. So for example, the most important brush out of 3 is a small one. So the small brush with a pointy tip. This one is, the shape is important. It needs to have this, you see, pointy shape, and it needs to have a really nice pointy tip, because there are a lot of fine details that we're going to be doing with this particular brush. Other than that, just grab something medium and something large. So for medium, for example, I think I'm going to go with this brush. You see, it's quite a bit larger than my small one. And for large one, I think I'm going to go with this one. So as you can see, I'm going to go with all pointies today. But again, it doesn't really matter. Square ones works just as well. All right. So we're going to start with our pencil sketch here. So the first thing that I would actually say you should guys do is find the middle of your canvas. So this is where a ruler comes very handy. I don't have a ruler. I will grab something straight and vertical around my house. Let's see what I have around here. And I will just put one vertical line with that. Okay, let's go with this. Not a ruler, it's a painting stick, but that will do, right? All right, so I added one vertical line right in the middle, and that's for the middle line of our little martini glass, because we want our glass nice and straight. We don't want our glass to be lopsided. We don't want one side to be bigger than the other, and so on. That's why we're doing this straight line in the middle. And then you do this. Fix your finger on the edge and just glide it through the edge. Now we need to decide how big our glass is going to be. And I would say we need to decide where the top of our glass is going to be and where the bottom of our glass is going to be. I would say for me personally, the top of my glass is about 1/3 of the height of the canvas from the top. So I would say this is approximately 1/3. So somewhere around here, I'm gonna put a little mark. That's for me to know that this is where the top of the rim of the glass is going to be. And this part is gonna be, I would say, a little bit less than 1/3 overall, so maybe until here. So again, I'm gonna put a little mark. That's for right here where this ends, right? And the rest is gonna be the stem, and again, you can decide until when it's gonna go. So for me, it's gonna go until about here, approximately, and I may rework this. I may look, once I start sketching, I may feel like, no, that's not the right positioning, and I may redo this. But for now, I'm gonna stick with that, because I think this would be, you know what, maybe I'll go a little bit higher for the beginning of my glass. All right, so do you see 3 marks? Top, where the stem begins, and the end. All right, now I need to put one middle line in the middle here. So you see there is like a little oval on top. So I'm gonna put a middle line for that too. So again, 2 reasons. The reason number 1, we don't want this to be sideways, right? We want it to be straight. So our glass ends up being straight and not crooked. And reason number 2, so this circle ends up being straight. So we don't want to have one side that's gone too far. So we just want it nice, straight, horizontal. So I would say this line should go a little bit lower than the top of where you decided. So again, I'm going to use straight edge of this painting stick. But again, straight edge of a book or something is great. It doesn't have to be a ruler specifically. And now that I have all my guiding lines, now I can move to the actual painting. So I'm going to decide how wide this is going to be. And again, this is totally up to you. The only thing that I think that really matters here is that it's equal size on both sides. So left and right should somewhat match. It shouldn't be much bigger on the left or on the right. And you can even measure it with your pencil like this. Put 1 mark and then see if it's the same on the other side. So in my case, it's almost the same actually. It's not exactly the same, but close. We can work with close. All right, now that I know the width, I'm gonna start by putting an oval. So you see a nice little oval. That straight line in the middle really helps with that. And then after that, out of those 2 sides, I'm going to put straight lines towards the middle, towards that dot that we decided is going to be where our stem connects to our upper part of a glass. So just straight lines going that way. Pretty simple, nothing complicated. And then after that, I'm going to add another oval on the bottom. So remember, this is a bottom part of your oval. It's not the middle, it's the bottom. And you can make this one as big as you want it to be or as small as you want it to be. That is for the base of our glass. So I would say probably don't make it too small because it needs to be reasonably large to hold a glass of the size that we're making, right? So it doesn't look like it's not stable. It should probably be visually stable. All right, and now we're going to connect. So the stem is going to be really, really thin in generally. So I'm going to put 2 lines on the sides, very close to my middle line. And then as I go up and down, I'm going to curve them. So up, I'm going to curve them into the glass. And down, I'm going to curve them into the base. And there we go. I have the base for my glass. Ta-da! Now I'm going to move on to all the decorative pieces here. So I'm going to start with the middle, because do you see because we're trying to make it look like a transparent glass, right? We're going to put this a little bit on the side. So this is not going to be the edge of a glass, but also the edge of a drink. The edge of a drink is actually going to be a little bit more on the inside to give for that transparency of the glass around it. And we're going to start by actually adding where the drink begins. So another oval. You can start by putting middle line for straightness or not, because we already have one oval. So it's entirely up to you. But then you're just going to add another oval where your drink begins. So I'll do somewhere right here for me. And then bring it down. See, now we have a nice liquid in our glass. And after that, I'm going to move on to my candy cane. So you can have your candy cane positioning any direction. My candy cane is going to go from here to probably around here, just as a general direction of my candy cane. You can hang your candy cane from this side if you wanted to. You can position your candy cane all across, like this, for example. So those are all optional positionings of your candy cane, right? But again, I'm going to stick with this one. But guys, feel free. You can have multiple candy canes, whatever works for you. So I'm going to erase those because, again, they were just options for candy cane positioning. And now that I have approximately decided where my candy cane is going, and I would suggest you do the same. Just kind of add like approximate line where you would like your candy cane to go. And then we're going to turn that into an actual candy cane by rounding up all the edges and adding the thickness to it. And then I'm going to erase a couple lines there. I'm going to keep this line. this line, 2 front lines, right? Because they're in front of my candy cane and the rest of them are at the back of my candy cane. Maybe I'll bring it a little bit lower so it goes like a little bit further to the glass. I know, Vicky, me too. In my case, it will have to be virgin though. No alcohol for this lady for the next couple months. But yes, looks so festive. I love cocktails and mocktails. They're the best. Alrighty, and after that, I'm gonna add the stripes onto my candy cane. So, it doesn't matter whether you start here or on top. Just gonna start adding those lines. Just make sure they're curved. You don't want to add straight lines because then you're not going to have that rounded shape of a candy cane. So just make sure your lines are all curved. Ta-da! That's my candy cane. Now for the rest of the elements, such as this beautiful branch, we're assuming so this is like a branch of something beautiful and fragrant and evergreen. And there are a couple cranberries on the bottom. So this one, you don't really need to sketch it because you're not going to see it. We're actually going to paint all of that black. So we're going to freehand that later. But if it makes you feel better and more confident and just more prepared, knowing where it's going to be later on, you can just position mostly just the baseline for it. So you know when the time comes in what shape that's going to be. And again, you're not going to see the line that you add right now. But the only benefit of it is that it kind of helps your brain to memorize the positioning. So it's easier second time around when we actually do it over the black canvas. So that's the only reason why you might want to consider doing that right now. And then we're going to add our 3 berries. You can have more than 3 berries because we all have different positioning, right? So for me, I don't have much space on the bottom, but I do have quite a bit of space here. So maybe I'll do one bigger berry here and a few berries that are almost hiding there. Like they don't have to be all circular and fully visible. It is whatever works for your positioning. Or if 3 berries is not really working for you at all, you can change it to 1 berry, 2 berry, any amount of berries. You can add any other spice to it. Doesn't, you know, it's build your own cocktail. It doesn't even have to be a cranberry. You can add any other type of candy there. You can add any other type of berry or fruit. You can add a spice of some kind. Anything that you like will work. Or like a little bit of ice, whatever you want to add. For me, it's cranberries. And the only other thing that I would like to add here is going to be the horizon line, just so I know where it is. Again, I'm likely not going to see it because I will paint right over it, but I think it will help my brain to navigate everything better. So I think I would like my horizon line to be somewhere around here. So I'm just going to add a little line there. Ta-da! And my sketch is done. And now I can move to the painting. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to finalize your sketch. I wouldn't give you a longer time because, again, you guys can always pause this and do it from the video when it's done recording. So there's no need to rush ever. You can make it a many-day project if you wanted to. But I will give you just a couple of minutes for anyone who would like to keep up and do it all from start to finish live. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to finalize your sketch. And again, feel free to modify it however you want, starting with a positioning of candy cane. You can add 2 candy canes. Like for example, I could add a second candy cane right here, right? And have the crisscross candy canes. I could add a couple more different candies in here. So anything you want to do, you absolutely can. And I'm going to stick with my tea today. And if anyone is attempting to make this in real life and actually drink it, let us know. Alrighty, guys, so hopefully we have it finalized, and now we're actually going to start with mixing our two colors. I'm going to mix my dark green emerald version, and I'm going to mix my hot pink version because we're going to start with them. For my dark emerald version, you can mix it with any brush. I'll mix with this brush, but it really doesn't matter. Whatever brush you have that you prefer to mix it with, the only brush I probably will discourage you from mixing with is your small brush because it will take forever and it's just, you're not going to end up with a good result. So anything medium, large, or anything in between is great. All right, so now I am going to use some blue, a little bit of yellow, some white. You see? So it's basically base of blue because we're aiming for a dark color, right? Then some yellow, not too much, but not too little either. So I would say start with a little and continue adding a little by little until you arrive at the right color. Don't just blob about equal amount of whatever you used in blue. You will not need that much yellow. We need a bit less than blue, and then definitely some white to it. You see that it looks great, but this is still blue. It doesn't look green just yet. So I'm going to continue adding a bit of more white and a bit more yellow, just to give it a bit more of a visually emerald color versus more of a greenish blue, because right now this is more aqua teal greenish blue. It's not full on emerald, so I'm just going to take a bit more yellow and add it in. This looks a little more emerald at this point, which is great. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's a beautiful color. I love that. So continue working on it until you feel like you arrived at the right color. For me, I may just add a tiny smidge more white to it. But other than that, I'm quite happy with my color. But again, you guys do whatever color works for you too. I mean, if you want it a bit bluer, that's okay. If you want it a little bit greener, that's okay too. So whatever color works, create that one. This one is great for me. And while I already have it on my brush, I may as well go on my painting. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it on my left side right here. So at around where my horizon line is. And I'm going to do this. And guys, I want to mention something. Add a lot more that you want to see in the end. Do you see? This is what I want to see in the end. I want to add more because the black I will overlap my green with. So the black will actually eat up into my green a little bit in the end. So I do want to add a bit more. Keep that in mind. Anything you don't like, you can always cover with black. So I added some of my green here. And I will also add some of my green from the top. Just a couple flicks here and there from the top. Same deal though. Feel free to add a little bit more than what you want to see in the end, because we can always, always, always trim it. Kind of clean it up a little bit with our black when the time comes. All right, that's pretty much it for this color for now. I will be using it later, but for now, this is good. Now I'm gonna make my pink. Pink is super simple. There's nothing complicated about it. It's literally just a red and white. So I'm gonna use the base of red, scoop it on the side, and then I'll add some white. How much white is really up to you, depending on how dark you want it to be. For me, I think this is great color. If you have pre-mixed pink of your choice that you like, great, you can use that. It doesn't have to be a mixture of red and white. If you have pre-mixed both of those colors that you like, awesome, you can use them. And I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to start with my hot pink here. And again, I'll add more than what I need. And I wouldn't be worried right now about making it wispy or anything like that. I can do all of this with black. Right now, I just need the base to be covered. So I just need to have this color laid out. That's all I care for. And I'm going to bring some from the top, the exact same way that I did with other color. And where your pink comes in contact with your green, you can try to overlap some pink on a green, but try not to blend it because it's going to turn into a bit of a muddy color if you do. So just add a flick or two, but don't go over them back and forth, or at least try not to. And again, we can deal with more of that later at the later layers after black. But for now, something like that. And the last place that I want to do with this pink is going to be middle of my glass, but I'm going to need to switch to my medium brush for this. So whatever medium brush, or even small, whatever works for you. For me, medium is just fine here. If medium doesn't work for you and small works better, that's totally okay too. And I'm going to color in the inside of my cocktail with pink. Technically, you can just go right over your cranberries too. You don't even have to avoid them because they're red, and red is a darker color, so we can always add them on top. And if you're a little bit messy around the edges here, it's not a problem because background is going to be black. So again, we can clean it all up. The only thing, try not to get too much on your candy cane. Other than that, everything is fine. Wherever you get it, it's no problem. Because everything around is going to be black. So again, we can clean it up. I would maybe even recommend going a little bit further so then you can clean it up with your black. Oh, nice, Julie. Hot chocolate is yummy. Very yummy. All right, guys, again, I'll give you just a minute for this. And then we're going to move to our next step, which is going to be a full-on black. It's a tricky situation here with black, but I think we can manage it. And I'll explain to you why it's a little bit tricky. Oh yes, absolutely. Vicky, this one, it does look difficult. It's not difficult, but there are certain things, you're right, that you kind of want to know up front because there are some trickiness to it. Like, for example, what are we going to do with the glass right now? It's a little tricky. So it's, yeah, it's a good idea to watch this first, actually. So the tricky part about the black is the glass. Because do you see the glass is actually painted white over the black. But because our sketch is on a white canvas, we will kind of have to leave a millimeter here and there. Not everywhere. You don't even have to leave a full outline because it really is connect the dots pretty much here. So we kind of have to leave a millimeter here and there to be able to connect the dots, or leave a simple gaps that you can connect later with your white over it. So not, you don't lose your sketch fully. The reason why we didn't do, let's say, the everything on black, like why wouldn't we do just black canvas and do everything on black canvas? So two reasons. Reason number one, it's very difficult to get all the bright white colors and all the vibrant colors on a black canvas. You need a lot more layers with a lot more drying in between. So it would have been layering upon layering just those sections to get them vibrant. With a white base, they get vibrant right away. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, it's much harder for you to see your pencil on a black canvas or on a painted black canvas versus on a white canvas. So you would have had a bit of a struggle with seeing your lines in pencil over black. So it's more, and especially on a tutorial, you would have really hard time seeing actually what I'm doing over the black canvas if we'd sketched it started from a black canvas. So again, we just have to be a little bit trickier here when it comes to black and everything else. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with my drink, with my beverage. So as I mentioned a second ago, I am going to do my best here with trying not to completely cover my outline. So I'm going to grab my medium brush. I'm going to grab some black, just straight black. Nothing crazy. And then I am going to go right around here. So do you see I added, thanks Vicky. So nice of you. Thank you. So do you see I added just black around it, but now the tricky part comes in. And actually you can use even a small brush at certain points if that's easier for you. So for example, right here, I'm going to try to leave just a tiny little gap. Do you see like a very small gap where my line is, so I don't lose my outline completely. But you don't want to leave too much because then it's going to really mess with your painting. You want to add that line in white. You don't want to leave it blank. So just leave as little as you can. So it's like a reverse of an outline in a way. The same with the front part. Just try not to lose all our outline, right? See, I can still see my full circle, even though it's not one solid line. I don't need it. I just need to have an idea where that's gonna go. It's almost like a sketch. So do you see? I'm reserving that outline. Here, the middle, I'm gonna get rid of intentionally. Just the very middle. Here to try to color in as much as you can. Just reserve the outline so you don't lose it. But other than that, we want to add everything with white. So you don't need to reserve too much. The idea is actually to paint it all with white over it versus reserving too much canvas. All right, this was the tricky part. Now I'm going to switch my brush. I'm going to wash off my medium brush, put it aside, and I'm going to grab my large one again. Whichever shape, doesn't really matter as long as it's larger. It's great. And I'm going to take some black paint on it. And now I'm going to start flicking and trimming those color areas. So let's start from the top, for example. So all this white canvas, I'm going to fully color in with the black, of course. I don't want to see any white pieces coming through. But as I start going further into the color, this is where I'm going to start flicking and overlapping and trimming. You don't need to see that much of a color, as long as it's peeking through a little bit. And you're always going to flick it in from the black area into the color area. So never this way, always this way. In this case, like on top. As we're going to other areas, it's going to be flicked again from black towards the color. And as you flick, you kind of want to dry brush it as well a little bit on top. So don't push hard. So you want to start pushing hard where you start on the black, and then as you go, you kind of want to lift your brush a little bit so it's more dry brushed. Let's go all the way to the edge here, and I'm going to flick it up again to nicely merge it into that beautiful greens there. And again, top, you don't have to see much of it. And then I can start merging it into the bottom as well. You see, this is what we're looking for. Nice merging between black and green. Just continue flicking in green until you have the right amount of it left and it looks nice, and you see it has this beautiful wispiness to it. And in no particular order. If let's say you wanted to finish this on top first before moving down, that's okay too. The order here doesn't matter at all. Whatever is easier for you, or just whatever feels more comfortable. All right, and now I'm just going to do the exact same thing from the bottom. So I'm going to go on the very bottom here, color in the remaining what needs to be black with black. And I'm going to start flicking into my green. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, well, almost dipped my brush in my tea, but thank God, not fully. Just almost. Another thing we may want to do right away, and by we, I mean, I definitely do want to do this right away, but you decide for yourself whether you want it or not, is I'm actually going to go with this black and I'm going to do my edge, because if you guys did it with me, I'm not a fan of unfinished edges. And black is very compatible color here because there's so much black up front. And technically, you don't have to do all your edges black. You can do color match, or you don't have to do all your edges at all if you don't want to. But you could do color match. You could bring green, pink, right, and only go black where it's black. But for the simplicity of things, I'm just going to do everything black. I don't think it will ruin it. In fact, I think it will look nice. So I'm going to do that while I'm already using black anyway. And I'm just waiting for my front to dry up a little bit. So I may as well, right? Oh, and almost Merry Christmas, guys. So close to Christmas. Hope everyone is feeling festive. All right, so I feel better about it now. Just unfinished edges, I don't know. Something about it drives me crazy. I don't like unfinished things, I guess, overall. Maybe I'll add just a little bit of black right here because it looks like there's certain spots that are, I can still see my canvas through, and I'm not a big fan of that. I'm just going to fill it in a little bit more here and there. All right, and we'll let it all dry up for a second. And of course, make sure you wash your brush really well. Dab it off on a paper towel before putting it aside so it doesn't, so the paint doesn't dry on it and ruin the brush. All right, and after this, as we wait for this to dry up a bit before we can move back to our background and add a lot more prettiness here, we can start working a little bit on our candy cane. So for starter, I would just say color it fully white. Grab your medium brush or any brush that you find is the most appropriate for the job and color the whole candy cane white. You will likely not lose your lines fully. You can still somewhat see them underneath. And if you find that you start losing your lines, you can just grab a pencil and darken them up before going over it. Or if you're really afraid to lose your lines and you realize that you're actually fully losing them regardless, you can just fill in all the areas that are going to be white with white versus coloring the whole thing. I personally prefer to color the whole thing in, and the reason why is, well, first, I'm not afraid to lose my lines. I'm not afraid to just freehand sketch them. I find that they're pretty simple. Second, I can still see them through my paint. Maybe not on camera, it's not visible, but the camera doesn't pick them up really. But in real life, I do see my lines still, somewhat. They're not crazy visible, but I can see them. I find that it's just easier and faster to do the whole thing in white versus having to do those little chunks, because then you need to use small brush. It's more possibility of you accidentally getting on a black. It's easier to make a bigger mess with having to fill them in one by one versus just doing everything in white, like a little base in white. So that's why I prefer doing a little base in white versus individual coloring in of those little chunks. And then after that, we're going to need to let our candy cane dry in a little bit. And as our candy cane dries a little bit, we can actually add just a tiny smidge of gray in there. So gray, again, use whichever brush you prefer, but I would say small would probably be the easiest. So I'm going to scoop some white on the side here. Well, just a little bit of black. We're not aiming to get a dark gray. We're aiming for like maybe medium to light, because in the end we want it to look fairly light, but because we're adding it over the white and that's still wet, you could go a little bit darker accounting for that blending that's going to happen. So I'm going to take this gray. I'm going to go right here, right on the edge here, and add a little bit of that. Because again, shadow, we're trying to maintain that rounded shape of our candy cane, right? If it's flat white, it doesn't have any lighter or darker sections, it's not going to look as rounded and, you know, like it has a 3D shape in the end. So that's why I like adding a bit of gray. So I'm going to add it to the side. If you want to, you can even add it a little bit, a tiny touch of it on the other side too. It's just this one would probably be the darkest regardless. But if you wanted to add a little smidge on the other side, you can. Again, just trying to maintain the 3D shape of it. That's the only reason why we're adding it. This is great. And if you accidentally got it on your black, you can always trim it back with the black. Again, just take a tiny smidge of black and trim it to your liking using black paint. And then I'm going to let it dry a little bit longer. And as that's drying, I'm going to move on to my cranberries and the bottom of my cocktail here. So the drink itself. And I will start by taking just straight red. So by straight red, I mean this one. I'm just going to take it exactly as is. I'm not mixing it with anything. If you don't have color that you just love personally, you can mix it to your liking. I mean, mix it with whatever needs to be mixed in it. Just make the color that you love. For me, I quite like this color. So one thing that I'm going to do with this color is I'm going to color in my cranberries fully. That's one. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of this red in this upper part of this cocktail, just to make it a little more interesting there. If you wanted to add a tiny smidge of it here and there on the bottom, like a little glare around here, you can, but I would say don't overdo it so your cranberries still pop. You see I'm adding just like a little smidge here and there, and that's okay, but don't overdo it. All right, I'm gonna give this a little bit longer time to dry because I need to add a red to my candy cane next, but again, I can't do this just yet until my white is dry. But what I could do as I wait, I could start working a little bit on my background because my background seems to be drier. And the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the rounds. So you see I have those smudgy kind of rounds in slightly lighter color than what we used. So you can use either medium or large brush for this, whatever works for you. Even small is fine because we can use our finger too. And remember where your horizon line is. So for me, I can still see it, but if you want to, you can just take your pencil, kind of mark it back where it needs to go, or you can even use white paint for this, just so you know. It doesn't have to be visible on your canvas, as long as you know where that is. Because we're not going to be going past our horizon line. And by horizon line, it's not really a horizon, I guess table line. But we're going to be going up from there. So this is why it's important for us to remember where that is. So I'm going to take a little bit of my teal. I'm not going to use all of them because I do want to use some of the darker version later for the branch here. So I'm just going to take some of it on the side and add a little bit more white to it. Not, again, not a crazy amount. I'm not trying to make it super light, but I do want it a little bit lighter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. This actually doesn't look light enough, so we're just going to add a bit more white. That's how it goes. You add some, you try it, it looks good, awesome. If it doesn't, adjust. I like doing this with a finger. You don't have to, you can actually dry brush it. So let me show you how that would look like. So if you do it with a finger, you basically just do a blob with some brush, and then outer edge of the blob is what you smudge with your finger. Now you can dry brush it, so basically take bare minimum of paint on your brush and do this. Starting from the middle, you rub it in the middle first, and then you rub it out. It's gonna give you about similar results either way. I would say it's more about what you're more comfortable with. So this is dry brush. Never do dry brush from the outside in, always do from the inside out. Inside first while you have a lot of paint on your brush, and then slowly go towards the outside and spread it as you run out of paint. So either is fine, whatever technique seems more comfortable for you. I would say maybe try both. Whichever seems more comfortable for you, stick with that one. We're just gonna add a whole bunch of those. You can make them in a couple of different shades too. Let's say you can add some and then maybe add a bit of either green or a bit of white to have slightly different shade. That there's nothing wrong with that. If anything, it's gonna make it more interesting. So it's not a bad thing. And some really small ones, you don't have to circle them up, you can just dab them up. So the ones that are a little smaller, instead of circling around, you can just dab, dab, dab. And you know what? Oh, sorry guys, didn't realize my camera got a focus. Really focus in a second. All right, refocused. Another thing you could do that I didn't mention yet is you can actually flick some over your pink here just to create a bit of merging, because you remember the pink was second that we added, so we went a little bit further with our pink, but now you can bring that a bit of that green emerald color into your pink as well if you wanted to. Completely optional. All right, this looks pretty nice. I like it. So I'm going to move on to my other side, and I'm going to start working on the other side, and I'll do pretty much the same thing. So again, we start by making a pink that's slightly lighter than our previous one. And how lighter depends. You're going to need to just try it. Make it a little bit lighter first. Try a couple of the circles. If it looks good, awesome, you hit it on a nail. If not, then just adjust the color All right, again. Oh, we're back. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this amount as well. So I think I'm gonna stop. Maybe I'll add a couple smaller ones because I think I added some smaller ones on the other side, but I didn't add any smaller ones here. So maybe I'll add a few smaller ones. That will be the end of it here. So again, I'm quite happy with this amount. Don't think I need much more. All right, now I can move on to my candy cane and I can do all those red sections because it already dried. So I'm gonna grab my small brush, just straight red color, and I'm gonna color in all of those little red sections in red. Straight red, not mixed with anything. And while it is still wet, there are a couple of things that I want to do right away. And the first thing is going to be I'm going to take some white, just straight white while it's wet, not a lot, I would say, on your brush. And I'm going to add it in on the upper part. And the goal is you want to make it pink actually. And by the way, I'm not adding it right on the edge. I'm adding it a little bit further in. So the edge should still be a little bit darker. This highlight is not the very edge highlight. It's a little bit further in. So again, and feel free to blend it a little bit too if it still looks super white as you add it. Because again, we're adding it mostly with the goal of blending right now. We're going to add the non-blended white later. This white should blend in and create pink. You see it already starts appearing as like a 3D shape. And if your paint dries fast, you can actually dry brush it on. And then you can blend it with a wet, slightly, well, not fully wet, slightly wet brush. to kind of make it a little bit more pink and blended. So that's one thing I want to do right away while it's wet. And second thing, do you remember how we added dark gray here? Not dark gray, like a medium gray on white. So I'm going to do something similar with red. So I'm going to take some red on a side. I'm going to add a smidge of black, just a little bit. We don't want to make it too dark, but also it depends how wet your paint is. If your red that you just added is still super wet, you could go a little bit darker. Again, accounting for the blending, because it will get lighter as you blend. If it's already dry, then just make it slightly darker. And everywhere where we added gray for darkness, I'm actually on the red parts. I'm going to add this mixture of red and black for the darkness. So again, it maintains that darker side, that shadow. And then I can add this color around my cranberries as well. So just a little bit. You don't have to add it all around the whole cranberry. Just to find a spot, you see, to kind of have a darker side, slightly darker side to your cranberries as well. And you can add a tiny smidge of pink. Any shade of pink will do for the lighter side of your cranberry. So do you see that red side that you left completely red? The bright side, you can add a smidge of pink in there. And now our cranberries start to really get some shape. All right, I'm happy with our cranberries, with our candy cane. Everything is coming together nicely. We don't have a shape of a glass yet at all, but shape of a glass is almost like a last thing here. Everything else has to be finished before we move to that. So I'm going to move on to our branch here. We'll work a bit on our branch, then we'll work again on our background, a bit more on all the elements, and then we'll finish up with the shape of our glass. So for our branch, I'm going to start with a dark. Do you remember that emerald-ish color that we used here as a base? So I'm going to start with the original version of it. If you start working on it and you realize the original version is way too dark, just add a bit of white to it. So I'm going to start by just putting that middle line again. Can be any shape you want it to be. I think for me, this is a good shape. It kind of evens it up a bit with candy cane being sewed to the side. And now I'm going to flick from the outside in and create lots of little pine needles or whatever those are. And this line is actually going to disappear for me fully. I'm not going to be seeing it after I'm done, but it's going to maintain the structure. It's going to maintain the shape of the whole thing. And add some on the other side. I'm assuming that it sticks out behind my candy cane a little bit on the other side too. All right, and then I'm going to do second layer, which is going to be a lighter version of it. So just take some of this and add more white. How light is up to you. I'm going to go pretty light at this point. As you can see, the difference is pretty big. But again, I'm adding it on wet, so it's gonna dry a little bit darker because it's gonna mix. And then I'm gonna add second layer with this. So second layer, you're not gonna go as far to the sides as the first layer, and you don't need to start with the line. You literally just fill it in with those pine needles at this point. All right. And then the last layer is going to be straight white, but again, not a lot. You don't take a ginormous amount of white. Just take a little bit of white on your plate, sorry, on your brush. And with that, we can add last layer, again, on wet too, so it blends, almost like a little highlight. And that's my branch, which again, I'm loving. I'm actually really liking whatever is going on here. Quite happy with this. So I would like to continue here and probably finish this up, and then we'll move to the rest of the areas. So now I want to grab a little bit of black. So just a tiny smidge of straight black on my small brush. I'll water it down a little bit because if I don't, it's just hard to work with. It gets a little thick, a little blobby. So if you want to make a really fine lines, it's always best to water it down a little bit. We're not aiming for transparency. As you notice, it's still solid black. It's just a nice liquid consistency that we're aiming for here. And I'm gonna start with adding just a slight outline to my candy cane here, just to add a bit more contrast and separate it from the other elements. See, very, very lightly. Add it as little as you can and as fine as you can. Same with berries. Just a little outline on those berries. Maybe a couple lines around. See a couple lines around here too. All right, loving this again. That's great. Now I'm just going to take a little bit more straight white, but this time you can do it. It doesn't have to be like just a tiny touch of it on a brush. Yeah, I'm not using a massive blob, but I'm not using like a dry brush technique either. I'm using a good visible amount of it. I'm going to start by adding a little glares on my berries. Like one or a few little glares. Then a little highlight on my candy cane. So this time you're adding that straight white that's not blending, right? Just a little bit around the same area where you added the blended one before. So not right at the edge, but a little bit towards the inside. And I'll add a few dots right here, following following the direction of my branch, and you can see some of them are larger, some of them are smaller. See, just a few following the same trajectory, I guess. And some on this drink. All right. That is the inside of my drink, which I'm very happy with. So this part is done. Not the outline yet, not the background, but that part is done. And then technically it doesn't really matter whether we move next to outline or next to background. There's no particular order in which that has to be done. So maybe we may as well stay on the drink. So I'm gonna take a bit more white then. This time I'm gonna water it down just a little bit, so it's easier to work with because I need to make some fine lines. If it gets a little more transparent, that's okay. It's not a problem here. And I'm gonna start by adding my rim. And I'm gonna add a flick down from each side. But notice I'm not doing the full-on line, just a flick down from each side. And then I'm gonna move on to from the bottom. So I'm gonna do flick from the bottom, and I'm gonna connect those two. So do you see this is not a solid line, so it's a flick, 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 flick. So it has a bit more of a glass transparency look. If you just make them full-on solid lines, it's gonna look a little more cartoony, and you're not gonna have that glass transparency feel to it. And I'm gonna add one line right in the middle, flick down, flick up. Again, sort of connecting the middle or not even fully connecting. But you don't want to get one solid line, you don't want that. And a few from the sides. This one should be smaller. So this one's are going to be a flick from the top. And I'm going to do a flick from the bottom here too. So you see, we're assuming that there is a sections there. You don't want to see everything. You want to kind of be guessing almost certain areas. And then I'm going to add some from the edge in here. And guys, the good thing about a black background is if you overdo something and you later feel like, oh, that was too much, it's so easy to fix it. You just basically take your black again and you cover up whatever was too much. So for example, right here, I feel like that was too much. I would rather get rid of some of this. So I can go back to my black and literally just cover up whatever I feel like was overdoing it with black. So you're not done with white. You can go back and forth between the two as much as needed until you feel like you have that look that you were going for with a transparent glass, and then you stop. And then another thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a reflection, but I'm going to do that with a medium brush. So I'm going to switch to my medium brush for this. I'm just going to take a little smidge of it and more like a dry brush it. Dry brush some under and then dry brush some for the stem. See, it's a little more transparent, a little more messy. And again, if you overdid it, you can always just go back to black. Take a little smidge of black. I'm gonna go over it and dim it a little bit if needed. You may not need that. And then we're gonna move on to all those beautiful details on the glass, such as sparkles and the salt rim or sugar rim. I would assume it's sugar in this case. I'm just gonna start with dabbing. You can use whichever brush is best for you out of what you have. Small brush works great for me, but medium will also work for me personally. I'm just gonna dab up the rim here. Assuming those are sugar crystals or some kind of candy, maybe some kind of crushed candy. I would love to try this cocktail. If it really existed, I would totally drink this. I feel this would taste like cranberry mint cocktail. And that would be very yummy. Maybe some aromatics from winter greens. Maybe some bitterness. I don't know. I'm just guessing what that would taste like. But I think that would taste great. So rim. Now I'm going to do a couple sparkles. You can position them anywhere. So I'm going to start right here. And how I do my sparkles, I start by flicking line up and line down. And line to the left, line to the right. Once I have those 4 lines flicked from the same dot, you can add a few more smaller lines from the middle. Just remember, you always want to flick lines from the middle out. So I added one here. I'll add one smaller one right here maybe. You just want to add a couple of those. I'll add one right here. This one is going to be large. This is good to have variety in sizes so they don't all look the same. All right, and we'll add one more right here. Ta-da! My cocktail itself is done. Now I'm gonna move to the background. Yay! I'm glad you guys like it. Just to answer your question quickly, the brand of paint that I use, unfortunately, is not available anywhere anymore. It's not what the company told us when we asked them if it's discontinued or not. They said it's not discontinued, but it's not currently being produced. So we are all very much hoping that one day this will be back on the shelves and we can buy more, because we are running out of our supplies, which we had many. But yes, the brand that I am using currently is called Start Acrylic. That's what I'm using. But any acrylic that you can find will work. Like this painting is not very particular as far as what brand you have to use. That's just a brand that works for us because we find that it's really nice for blending and it's quite vibrant. All right, so let's move on to our background now. I'm going to start with you can start with medium or a large brush. If you have a square brush, no problem. You may actually find it the easiest, but if not, it doesn't matter at all. It's just if you have square brush, you can do this in one shot. I'll show you. So we're going to use white. I'm going to take some white in my brush. If you're using square brush, you can do it in one shot, as in you go, we're going to go onto horizon line. Right here, you use the top edge of a brush to put this line, because square brush can do that. It can give you fine lines, right? If you use just the top edge. And then from there, you flick it down with a flat side of a brush. So you see, square brush is so perfect for this particular step if you have one. But if you don't, I wouldn't worry about that. So that's how you would do it with the square brush if you have one. If you don't have one, you probably just need to do it with the two different brushes. So you're going to start with a medium or small brush of any other shape. If you don't have square brush, you're going to add your line first, horizon line, and then you're going to switch a brush to, again, a larger medium. I'm going to switch to large in this case. And I'm going to start by actually adding a little bit of underneath here, because if I start right here, I'm going to mess up my line. So I need to add a bit of underneath, and only after that I can bring it down. Because again, when I use rounded brush, my brush strokes are not square, so I can't start right at that line. I have to kind of color it in a little bit further going down, not to mess up that line. So again, either is totally fine, but this is easier. So that's this section. And now everything that's left for us is just those rub dots. So remember how we did them in our green and pink? So in the same way, we're just going to do them with white now. I'm going to go back to my medium brush for this. I'm going to take a little bit of white. Not like a dry brush, a little bit, a lot more, but I'm not using, like, again, a massive blobs of paint either. And you can either dry brush it or use your finger. I'm going to use my finger because I find it's easier. So I'm going to add a blob, take a finger, smudge the outer edge of the blob. If the inner edge gets smudged too, it's fine, and it probably will, but just don't aim for the inner edge. Always aim to kind of smudge the outer edge. You can add as many of those as you want, anywhere you want. Larger ones, do it in a circular motion. Smaller ones, literally just dab them up with your finger. Just dab, dab, dab. I'm gonna make it a little softer. That's the goal. All right. And let's do the same thing on the other side. I'll use different finger this time because this one is kind of green. I will not be taking any chances here. All right, and I'll finish up with just a couple of those small dabby ones on the bottom, and we will be officially done. And ta-da! Congratulations, you made it. We all made it through. It is officially done and it looks delicious. I would love to have this one day. Maybe I'll even make it one day. Alrighty, guys. Does anyone have questions? How does it look? So I am, as always, looking forward to seeing your results. For those of you guys who may be first time joining us or you have no idea how to share your results, I will make sure to include the link in the description of this video. I don't remember if I already did or not, but once we're done here, I will double check for sure to make sure there is a link in the description where you can share your results. So feel free to do that. We always love to see how they turned out. Yeah, so please feel free to do that. If you don't want to, that's no problem. I don't want to pressure you into doing it for sure, but I always do look forward to seeing those. And if this is your first time, just accidentally stumbled onto our channel, well, glad you stuck around to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to just check and browse around and see what we already have, because we do have so many videos uploaded already and live events just like this one. And we do go live, I would say, about once to twice a week here on YouTube. So feel free to check out everything that's coming up in that category as well. And if something piques your interest, you can always press notify me, and then YouTube will notify you when we go live. And we also have a lot of the events that are coming up on our website, whether it's video releases or live events just like this one. So feel free to check it out. I will also make sure to add a link to our website in the description of the video. And thank you all, guys, to those of you who signed up on our website to participate in this event and who pre-tipped just based on the faith in my ability to teach events. I appreciate this on liking the image. Your tips are very, very much appreciated. They help us artists to stay afloat, and continue investing our time into making tutorials just like this one. And if you enjoyed it and you feel like you do want to support us through tipping, you can always do that by using a PayPal link that's in the description of this video. So you can do that as well. So just a heads up, tips are never something we expect from you guys, but they're always nice thing, and they do make us smile, and they do help a lot financially. So on that note, does anyone have questions? And you can always, if you think of something later, if let's say you're painting from the video, maybe you're not doing this live, and you thought of something, you can always leave a comment. We'll be happy to answer the questions for you. But just a heads up, if it's more something urgent that you might want assistance with or question, it is much faster to reach us through email or our Facebook page than through comments. We will gladly respond to your comment, and we do check our comments, but it just may not be for, let's say, it wouldn't be an immediate response. It will likely take a couple of days for us to get to it. If you require or you prefer a guidance faster, email us. That's the fastest way to get us. And second fastest way is probably through our Facebook Messenger. So feel free to try that. Just a heads up. Yes, thanks, Julie. Merry Christmas, everyone, and happy holidays. New Year is almost here as well. Wow. Crazy how time goes. All right, doesn't sound like anyone have questions. And thank you guys for all your kind words and for tips as we're live. They're all appreciated. I hope you like it. I personally do. I think it's fun and really pretty painting, and I love how both versions turned out, the original and the one from today. The only thing I'll actually do is after we're done here, I will take my time on painting the edges, because I just noticed that I never made them. I never painted them, and I do like it more with painted edges. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, thank you all for joining me, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.